Alright, what's going on everyone? Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Vivien Nature's Vengeance Planeswalker deck. As always, do keep in mind that these are not intended to be tier 1 competitive decks. If you want that, consider checking out the latest tournament results. What we'll be doing is upgrading this deck card by card, sticking to this deck's themes, and doing it on a budget as we will not exceed the retail price of these decks with our upgrades. Also, 2 quick notes: if you want the most competitive deck you can possibly get out of the box, I highly recommend the Challenger decks because they're amazing. I'll leave links in the description to those if you want to check them out. Also note that Standard is rotating in a few months of this video's release. While the cards in this deck are legal, just be careful about spending too much money on a Standard deck because rotation is incoming. Alright, anyway, so the Vivien Nature's Avenger Planeswalker deck is a mono green deck that is basically looking to play creatures that are bigger than the opponent's creatures. So for example, Bark Troll is a 2 mana 3/3 and Vivien's Crocodile can be a 3 mana 4/4. That's the idea. You just want your creatures to be bigger and faster so you can apply pressure in the early game, and then you can top out with big beefy creatures like Silverback Shaman and Aggressive Mammoth to pummel your opponent into the ground and win by, just beating with big giant creatures. That's the idea. Pretty simple. It also has this weird little sub theme where you get bonuses for targeting your creatures, but I don't feel like it's necessary and it's kind of dragging the deck down a bit, so whatever. Anyway, the principle is very simple. All we need to do is take these creatures and find some slightly more powerful replacements and we can really push this deck to another level. So let's do that. First off, we're gonna take out all 4 Greenwood Sentinels and replace them with 4 Thorn Lieutenants. So we're losing Vigilance, but we're getting so much more out of the Lieutenants. They have an extra point of toughness, so they're sturdier in combat, plus our opponent can't target them with their removal spell without giving us a free token out of it, and then if we draw it in the late game, instead of having a useless small creature that does nothing, the Lieutenants can pump themselves up to a 6/7 if you have the excess mana. So it gives us something to batter our way through our opponent's defenses, unlike the Sentinel, which can be kind of a dead card later in the game. Next, we're going to take out all 4 Vivien's Crocodiles and replace them with 4 Steel Leaf Champions. This is simple. If we control Vivien, the Crocs are 4/4s for 3 mana, but Steel Leaf Champion is a 5/4 to start with. We don't even need Vivien, so it's always bigger no matter what. We get an extra point of power even if we do control Vivien. Not only that, but it has the added bonus of being difficult to block. So this is just strictly better in this deck. Definitely a big improvement. Next, we're going to take out a Waker Root Elemental and we're going to replace it with Gargos Vicious Watcher. We don't have any other Hydras, but this is still an improvement in my opinion. The Elemental is a 6 mana 5/5, which isn't great, but the following turn we can spend 5 mana to make our 6th land a 5/5 as well, essentially giving us 10 power. The Hydra is a 6 mana 8/7, so it's bigger than the Elemental, and even though it doesn't give us that 10 power the following turn, we also don't have to dump all of our mana into it to get that power. Plus it has Vigilance, so it can block as well, which is pretty nice, and then it has the added bonus of fighting a creature if we ever target it with anything. So if we target it with Growth Cycle, for example, not only does the Hydra get bigger, but it can potentially kill the only creature available to block it as well, which is pretty cool. Next, we're going to take out Might of the Masses and replace it with Llanowar Elves. Might of the Masses just doesn't really make a lot of sense in this deck, as it's more at home in a deck that's producing a ton of tokens. We're looking to have, maybe 2 to 3 big giant monsters on the field at a time, so we just can't use it to its full potential. The Elves, on the other hand, are going to help us play out our big stuff a turn earlier, which is going to be pretty huge. I mean, we're already putting out bigger creatures than our opponent can, and then if we draw the Elves and start playing them a turn early, that's going to be very difficult for any opponent to keep up with, I assure you. So ramping into our stuff that's already bigger than our opponent's stuff is pretty good. And for that reason, we're also going to take out 3 Titanic growths for 3 more Landware Elves. The Titanic growths are, they're fine, I guess. It basically works like a burn spell. We play it on an unblocked creature to get an extra 4 damage. It can also be kind of a combat trick if our opponent has a bigger creature, but it's just not really something we need to do in this deck. But using Landware Elves to play out our creatures a turn early is the type of thing that's going to win us a ton of games. Plus it'll help us reach enough mana to cast our big 5 to 6 mana beaters, since you can't always rely on drawing that many lands. So yeah, this can help get us there. Definitely worth having a full playset of Landware Elves. And that's kind of all of our upgrades. Sort of. We didn't actually have to change that much because most of the filler cards that are usually kind of terrible were kind of decent, but I do think there's a few small things we could do. So first off, these are all optional, but I feel like Gnarlback Rhino could probably be replaced, but all of the best replacements are a little bit too expensive for us. There are a lot of great options for this slot though, things like Goreclaw, which reduces the cost of all of our expensive creatures and gives them all +1/+1 and trample when we attack. Ripjaw Raptor is also great. It's bigger and it draws a card whenever it's dealt damage. Shifting Ceratops also fantastic. It's resilient to removal. And Nullhide Ferox, which makes us unable to cast Growth Cycle and Rabid Bite, but it's also pretty good. So yeah, all of those are fantastic. They're just a little bit too expensive. On the budget side, we could replace it with Territorial Allosaurus or Emperor's Vanguard. Both of these are fantastic in this slot as well. I'm just not 100% those last two are like an insanely good upgrade. I mean, they're kind of parallel in their power level, you know what I mean? They're similar in power, they just do something a little bit different. One draws us cards, one's a little bit bigger, one lets us explore a lot. But any of those more expensive cards would be fantastic here. They're just a little bit too expensive for us, but something to consider for sure. Any of these cards in this spot and it's totally fine. The other thing I want to note is Season of Growth. It might be better as a Colossal Majesty, but once again, it's not so much as an upgrade as just a different kind of card. Season of Growth lets you scry and then you draw whenever you target a creature with a spell. But the problem with that is we only have 7 spells in the deck that can target a creature. Colossal Majesty lets us draw every single turn that we have a big creature in play, but it does nothing if our opponent can kill off our creatures. Honestly, if it was me, I would probably split them and play one of each. But yeah, both of these are fine really. Anyway, yeah, that's all of our upgrades. If you want to go further with the deck, there are tons of cards that are too expensive for us. The most notable are probably Ghalta Primal Hunger and God Eternal Ronos. Ghalta is a 12/12 with trample and it has a very high mana cost, but it gets cheaper if we have big creatures in play, which we usually do. And Ronos doubles the power of all of our creatures the turn it comes into play, which can be an absolute game finisher for sure. Carnage Tyrant would also be amazing in this deck. It's super resilient to removal and can really smash face. Most people won't be able to do anything about it because of how hard it is to deal with. It's the type of card that comes into play and control players just kind of sink in their chair because what are they going to do about it? You could also probably upgrade the Vivien that comes with the deck with the other core 2020 Vivien or even the 2019 version. I think both of these would be much better in the Planeswalker slot, and if you do decide to go with these, you can also replace the Ethereal Elves with any number of things. Ghalta and God Eternal Ronos would both be great. Cavalier of Thorns also works really well here, but if all of those are too expensive, then Gigantosaurus or Thundering Ceratok work fine as well. The Ceratok is kind of terrible, but a 4/5 with trample is better than a 3/3 with trample if you don't have the Planeswalker to search for. And one other note, I left Aggressive Mammoth in, but most of our big stuff already has trample, so it could probably be replaced with another Gargos. However, you can definitely leave the Mammoth in if you replace the Elks with something like Gigantosaurus. That way they have a chance of having trample. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all of our upgrades. This deck is by no means a tier 1 deck, but it's definitely a lot more powerful than what we started with. The deck is so linear with just putting out big giant creatures every turn that there is a lot of versatility in how you upgrade it. That's why I didn't set a lot of this in stone in terms of like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to take this card out and you have to put this one in. You can kind of like shift this back and forth based on how you want to play and what creatures you want to play, just because, the concept's very simple. You just want a 4-drop creature that's a really good 4-drop. Then you want a 3-drop creature that's a really good 3-drop. drop. That's really all this deck cares about. So like for example, if you don't like Silverback Shaman, you can totally replace it with basically any other 5 mana creature. That's totally fine. You can use Gigantosaurus here, you can use Ronos, you can use Cavalier of Thorns. Just basically any 5-drop ever would be perfectly fine in that slot, because all it cares about is having that big creature. So yeah, it's very versatile, and it's kind of like, you know, I didn't want to set too much stuff in stone just because I didn't want people to go out and spend $2 each on, you know, a Shifting Ceratok when they might have pulled a Ripjaw Raptor, and that's totally fine. If you have Ripjaw Raptor, replace the Rhino with the Ripjaw Raptor. If you don't have a Ripjaw Raptor, but you happen to pull a Shifting Ceratok and a Core 2020 booster, put that in at the 4 slot. You know, like any of those are fine. That's what's so great about this, is like you can definitely go out and spend like $30 or $40 on cards at every single slot, but you can also just kind of cobble together what you have. If you have, you know, 1 Shifting Ceratok, 1 Ripjaw Raptor, and 1 Goreclaw, you could actually take out the 3 Rhinos, all 3 of those in those spots, and that would actually be an improvement. That's fine. You're kind of scattered, but at the same time, every single card is better than the Rhinos. And, you know, at the end of the day, what matters is on turn 4, you want a good 4-drop. All this deck cares about is get a good 3-drop in, then get a good 4-drop in, then get a good 5-drop in, and turn them sideways and apply pressure and attack. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want at each slot. Just don't replace a 3-drop with a 4-drop, or don't replace a 4-drop with a 6-drop, because then you're going to make the deck slower and clunkier and maybe a little bit awkward. But so long as you're taking out cards with 1 converted mana cost and replacing them with cards with the same converted mana cost, you should be pretty fine with this. There's not like a really hard, strict strategy here other than putting creatures in play on curve. So yeah, there you go guys. That's the video. If you like these Planeswalker deck upgrade videos and want to see more like it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to them, and you can find a link to it in the description below. You'll also find my Amazon affiliate link, so if you want to support this channel, you can use that link to buy literally anything on Amazon, magic related or not, and I'll get a small kickback that helps improve this channel. It doesn't cost you any extra to do so, and I appreciate it a lot. Also consider subscribing for more upgrade videos in the future, but in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.